Welcome to Video Village, I'm Mihir, and today we are talking about not one but two biopics that released in December of 2023. I'm talking about Maestro and Ferrari. Let's get into it. So let's talk about Maestro first. I'm going to hit both of these movies for about 15 minutes each, nothing crazy today. But really just wanted to talk about these two movies because they are probably the two most notable biopics that came out during award season in 2023. That is, of course, the end of the year. We're definitely going to be seeing some Oscar nominations for Maestro right around the corner. And maybe an acting nomination for Ferrari, maybe like a cinematography or even like a visual effects. No, that'd be crazy, but I don't know. It might be represented in one of the below the line categories at the Oscars. So I think that these are two movies that are definitely worth watching and deserve a shout out as well as a little bit of a review and an analysis. So let's talk about Maestro first. So Maestro is a movie directed by Bradley Cooper, also starring Bradley Cooper, about the life and I guess relationship of Leonard Bernstein and his wife Felicia. Now, this is like one of the, if not the great American composer, Leonard Bernstein, who is responsible for most notably, I guess, like making music for West Side Story and Candide, as well as a bunch of other classical music, I guess, accomplishments that I'm really not that familiar with. But he is definitely one of those people who I have heard the name of and have been, I guess, vaguely familiar with, being, you know, I guess, into music and into movies. And so I was really curious about this movie because of that, but also mostly curious about it because it was directed by Bradley Cooper. Now, Bradley Cooper is somebody that we think of as an actor, primarily a comedic actor, but in the last 10 years, he has gone through a pretty significant career change, career revival. He is really trying to become an auteur, really trying to become a great American filmmaker. He directed A Star is Born in 2018, which I thought was incredible. I think is one of the best movies of 2018. Certainly one of the best like musical movies I have seen in a long time. That starred Lady Gaga and him as love interests and was really sad and really heartbreaking, but also just like incredibly well done. And really, I thought like pretty humble filmmaking. This is a bit different. This is Bradley Cooper basically like on screen for almost 2 hours begging the world to acknowledge him and give him an Oscar. And I'm not saying that that means that it's a bad movie. I actually did like this movie, but for good and for bad, like this is Bradley Cooper putting it all on the line. He's also starring with Carey Mulligan, who plays Leonard Bernstein's wife Felicia, who is in most scenes arguably the better actor. I think she like doesn't have as many like showy moments in the movie, but she's like really incredible and really brings a gravitas to the role that I think like is definitely worth shouting out. I think she actually probably will get an Oscar nomination for this performance, which I think is absolutely deserved. Carey Mulligan, who I probably first saw growing up in The Great Gatsby, has been in a lot of movies. She was also in Saltburn in a very minor role this year. But she's just one of those people that like makes everything good. Like I don't think she puts out any bad performances. So really happy to see her in this movie and rightfully probably getting the credit that she deserves. This movie was produced by Bradley Cooper along with a handful of other people, including Martin Scorsese and Steven Spielberg, two of the great American living filmmakers. I think this is because they were both interested in making a movie about Leonard Bernstein at one point in time. And so I think this IP, I guess, or this idea has been passed around throughout Hollywood for the last 10, 15 years, lands in Bradley Cooper's lap. And, you know, Martin Scorsese and Steven Spielberg must have thought that it was a good idea for Bradley Cooper to take on and rightfully supported him. So if Maestro gets nominated for Best Picture, that means Martin Scorsese and Bradley Cooper and Steven Spielberg, among the other producers, are all nominated for an Oscar. This movie is written by a man named Josh Singer, as well as, I guess, co-written by Bradley Cooper. And Josh Singer wrote, most notably, a movie called Spotlight that came out in 2015, one of my favorite movies. He also wrote a movie called First Man that was directed by Damien Chazelle, the same director as La La Land and Whiplash. If you haven't seen First Man, that movie is incredibly underrated. Beautiful music, beautiful acting, stars Ryan Gosling. Yeah, definitely check that out. It's about the astronaut Neil Armstrong. Okay, so this movie came out on Netflix. I guess it came out in theaters first, and then it came out on Netflix during the holidays. And, it's a biopic. So there's two different types of biopics, right? There's one biopic that covers the whole life of whoever it's featuring, which this movie falls in that category. This takes you basically from like Leonard Bernstein at 25 to Leonard Bernstein at 70 years old. And you're seeing the trajectory of his career, the trajectory of his love life, the trajectory of his personality, everything kind of like where it falls into place, where it starts to break down. You kind of see the whole arc, which I think those movies are great. I think those movies can be really, really fun. I think those movies also have the opportunity of getting too long or getting lost in the sauce and just not really knowing what it's trying to say. I think this movie suffers from that a little bit, and I'll talk about the specifics of that shortly. But this movie starts out, like I said, with Leonard Bernstein at 25, and he basically gets a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity as the assistant conductor of the New York Philharmonic, to conduct the Philharmonic when the conductor falls ill. And his performance as conductor is celebrated by the audience and basically catapults him to a new level of fame in New York City. And he is kind of like overnight, literally become one of the great American musicians in the city. And takes you through him going to parties and meeting Felicia at this party and dating. And, I guess like the first scene of the movie, I guess the second scene of the movie, but the first scene of this 25-year-old Leonard Bernstein section of this film features Leonard Bernstein sleeping with another man, which I didn't know that Leonard Bernstein was bisexual, but it's very prominently featured in this film. And it's a I guess like a large part of what this movie is kind of trying to show us. He is in a relationship with a man played by Matt Bomer. I think that man is David Oppenheim. It also kind of, in a fun way, shows that Leonard Bernstein was living with a lot of different musicians in the city at the time, and some of those names are also very, very important names to American classical music. Aaron Copland is one of the men featured very briefly in a quick line of dialogue, but if you are a music nerd, you definitely would catch that and probably freak out. Anyway, I digress. This movie in the beginning basically features him catapulting to success, and the first, 45 minutes of the film is really electric. And I think the most fun part of the movie, it showcases Bradley Cooper's direction and his ambition as a director. There's like really, really, really cool visual sequences in this film. There's one shot of Leonard Bernstein, running from his room to the stage in Carnegie Hall and then back to his room. And it's like an electric 30 seconds that just like literally like pushes you into this world of classical music. Him and Felicia are kind of flirting on this stage, and they enter this musical dance sequence that is based on one of the early musicals that Leonard Bernstein actually wrote in his career. And that whole sequence kind of like, I think it's supposed to represent Leonard Bernstein coming out to his future wife Felicia in this moment, and her kind of accepting this aspect of him. And it's like 5 minutes of an electric musical dance sequence, and I thought this was done incredibly well. I should mention that the first half of this movie is done in black and white, and then it becomes a movie in color halfway through. I think to kind of represent like this romantic era of his youth, and then the realities of who he has become as a real adult, and kind of like sitting with those consequences and how it impacts his life. Anyway, I think the first 45 minutes of this film were my favorite part because it felt like it was driving towards something. Right? It was driving towards the future of Bernstein's success and the future of his relationship. And then the movie slows down because there's a time jump to, I guess, like the mid-1950s when the Bernsteins are in their close to 40, like I guess like 40s, late 30s, early 40s, let's say. And Bernstein is a bit of a mess. Bernstein is starting to have affairs with men. He clearly is addicted to alcohol and maybe some other substances. And his marriage has taken a toll. And all these things are kind of like introduced one after the other. And we kind of see this, I won't say downfall, but this like strain put on the relationship. And this kind of takes up a large chunk of the movie. And I think that's fine. I think it's okay to focus a biopic on a love story and the trajectory of it. And, that's what this is. This is a movie about his relationship. But I think that by the time I got to the end of the film, I wasn't really met with as strong of an emotional catharsis as I would have hoped. There were a couple of moments in the film that really, really hit home. But when I look at the story of the movie, I'm like, I still don't get why things were kind of said in the way they were said. There's two examples that I'm thinking of. One huge scene that takes place in this movie is when, in 1973, Leonard Bernstein conducts Mahler's Resurrection Symphony in a cathedral in England, which is a legendary performance. You can watch it on YouTube. Bradley Cooper basically recreates this whole setting. And in this 5-minute, 6-minute scene of him conducting this symphony, you believe he is Bernstein. He is incredible. And it's 5 or 6 minutes of he's begging for the Oscar, but maybe he deserves it because good Lord, he looks incredible. And it's very powerful and one of the best sequences in the movie. Before this happens, maybe 15 minutes before this happens, Felicia has basically told Bernstein that she thinks that he has hate in his heart. And that he's going to die a lonely old man if he continues on his current path. They have this huge argument during Thanksgiving, during the Macy's Day Parade, which is a really well-acted scene, maybe a little overwritten, but I thought it was very effective. The camera is super far from them while they're acting, which is, I thought, an interesting choice, but overall an effective scene, which, great. He has hate in his heart. Then when he's conducting, it's amazing, and she's watching from the sidelines. And after the performance, he goes to the side very quickly, and he gives her a kiss, and he's like, "Hey, why did you come?" And she says, "Oh, there's no hate in your heart." And they reconcile in this moment. And I just thought that was so weird. I'm this isn't a piece of music that Leonard Bernstein wrote. He was conducting incredibly, but how is the way that he was conducting so indicative of that he has no hate in his heart? And it just kind of happens. And I just felt like that moment wasn't actually paid off emotionally. So I just was confused. And then there's this whole third act of the film, which is basically Felicia being diagnosed with breast cancer. She has to have surgeries and aggressive chemotherapy. She loses the actual breast and she basically deteriorates. And we see this deterioration in one of the most powerful sequences in any movie of the year, where Carey Mulligan as Felicia is talking to some old friends in their home and is, coughing up and trying really hard to be social and overall just ultimately failing to do so. And she's having a really hard time. Bernstein comes down and plays on the piano. It's a really sweet scene, and it is ultimately followed by maybe 5-10 minutes of movie before Felicia ultimately dies. And very sad, very well shot, very well crafted. All that's great. The end of the movie, a bit confusing. It shows Leonard Bernstein going back to teaching, conducting at some sort of college or at some sort of camp or something. And this is at the end of his life in his 70s. And he is shown to be a very good teacher, but then that night partying and having, I won't say an affair, but having relations with the student he was teaching in the club. He's dancing and really close with that student. And then the movie ends with Leonard Bernstein in his home as a 70-year-old saying to this interviewer that he misses Felicia. And then we see an image of Carey Mulligan. And then we see Leonard Bernstein and he says, "Any questions?" which is a line that Felicia said halfway through the film. And then it ends. And I was just confused by it. I don't understand what the point of the film really was. If the point of the film was hey, this is just a movie about Leonard Bernstein's love life and his complicated journey and his complicated story, and even at the end of the life, despite everything that he said to people and the way he kind of represented himself in the media, he was still this guy who was loose. Sure, that's fine if that's all the movie's trying to say. But it feels like the movie's trying to say more. Like, it feels like it's trying to be deeper, and I for the life of me couldn't figure out what it's trying to say. So those two moments, the cathedral symphony scene with the "There's no hate in your heart" and this kind of like ending where it ultimately ends with him, and this like juxtaposition of him saying, you know, I love my wife and I'm always gonna miss her, but simultaneously like sleeping with young men. I don't get it. I'm not saying it doesn't work. Maybe if that's the point, then like that's the point. But for whatever reason, I was left with this like this emptiness that I couldn't really reconcile. So that's what I'll say about that. Overall, I recommend this movie. This is like Bradley Cooper acting his ass off, Carey Mulligan acting her ass off, and some really promising filmmaking under the direction of Bradley Cooper in his second movie he's ever directed. And like, I like Bradley Cooper a lot. He's one of those guys that like over the last 10 years, I think with the start of Silver Linings Playbook, a movie that he was acting in opposite Jennifer Lawrence that he was nominated for an Oscar for. Ever since then, he has been like acting in a lot of dramas, hasn't really done a straight up comedy like The Hangover since. And then of course 2018, since he's been fully like, hey, I want to be taken seriously as a filmmaker, almost to like the nth degree, to where like I can see people online getting annoyed with him. I think it's kind of funny that how hard he's trying to like be the industry darling and win awards. And to be fair, he kind of is the industry darling. Apparently people love him. People are like obsessed with him. And he's doing very good in the awards circuit. I'm not sure he's going to win, but in terms of nominations, at the Screen Actors Guild Awards, the SAG Awards, he just beat out Martin Scorsese for a nomination for Best Director, which is honestly absurd considering how good the movie Killers of the Flower Moon is and what that means. But, you know, he, in terms of like awards race, he's doing the thing. This movie's on Netflix, if I hadn't mentioned that before. If you're looking for a 2-hour, I guess, like love story with a pretty electric cast, I recommend this movie. Is it incredible? No, but it has incredible moments, and I think it's, at the very least, like an interesting story, and you know, an important American figure to learn about, and I guess to be curious about. So that's Maestro. Let's take a quick break, and we're gonna talk about Michael Mann's Ferrari, starring Adam Driver and Penelope Cruz. Alright, we are talking about Ferrari. Ferrari was directed by Michael Mann. Michael Mann is the man. He made a lot of movies over the years. He's very old now. A couple of movies that he has made. So probably most famously made the movie Heat, starring Robert De Niro and Al Pacino. A movie that I only watched for the first time in 2023. I really liked it. It's a really fun, like cop and robber, cat and mouse movie. He also made movies like Ali, starring Will Smith, Collateral, starring Tom Cruise and Jamie Foxx, Miami Vice, Thief, starring James Caan, The Last of the Mohicans, starring Daniel Day-Lewis. A lot of like pretty like well-received and popular movies. He's now, like I said, pretty old. Who knows if this is his last film? I think that's why that a lot of people have been like really paying attention to this movie. But anyway, I digress. This movie is based on a book called Enzo Ferrari, The Man, the Cars, the Races, the Machine. Follows Enzo Ferrari during like 1 year of his life. I think the year is 1957. So this is in the second category of biopics. Earlier in this podcast, I said like there's two different types of biopics. There's one that is about someone's whole life, but the second one is about just one small chapter in someone's life. To me, that's the more interesting version of a biopic, where you can explore a movie character based on a real person in a specific time of their life and say, we're going to infer certain things about the personality. We don't have to like explain every single thing about this person, but we can kind of dive into like the deep recesses of them a lot easier by saying like, the details don't matter. This is about this one summer. And that's what this movie does pretty effectively. So the main story here is that Enzo Ferrari is facing professional and personal crises. So I guess professionally, his team, F1 team specifically, is like incredibly in debt, and so they have to merge with another company in order to continue doing business. However, his wife, played by Penelope Cruz, is Laura Ferrari, who owns half of the business, and basically is like unwilling to sign over the company to Enzo in order to make this deal happen because she wants to hold on to her share. So instead, Laura demands a check for $500,000, which basically is enough money to bankrupt the company if she decides to cash it at this very moment. And that's basically like the deal that she is willing to make and nothing else. Meanwhile, Enzo also has a child with another woman, Lena Lardy, played by Shailene Woodley, and is like very clearly in love with this mistress of his. It's also very important that Ferrari's son Dino, who he had with Laura Ferrari, died a year before the events of the film. And so they both are, Enzo and Laura are both grieving the loss of their son, kind of like separately because of their, I guess, marital strife. And I think a lot of the marital strife is like, due to this death that obviously couldn't have brought them closer because Enzo was clearly already having at least one affair. And all of this is kind of like culminating in this one summer. The movie kind of gravitates more towards a character study of Enzo Ferrari, kind of balancing these two women as well as balancing the responsibilities of his company. And really, I guess like for most of the film is kind of a like talky drama, which I did not expect. I really expected this to be more of like a racy movie. That's a weird way to say it. A movie about racing. That being said, the race scenes in this film are incredible. Like some of the most like riveting scenes of 2023 and some of the most harrowing scenes specifically in the last act of the film when they're actually in the race, the Mille Miglia that they're kind of gearing up for the majority of the film. But let me talk about the actor. So Adam Driver is like, he's the fucking man. I just watched the movie 65 today. It came out in, I think, March of 2023. Awful movie. Don't recommend it. It's on Netflix. Adam Driver's still great. He obviously was in the Star Wars films that came out in the late 2010s. He started his career as like a character on Girls. He also was in this film called This Is Where I Leave You, which is a really charming movie starring Jason Bateman and Tina Fey. And gosh, he's in like, obviously he was in Marriage Story in 2019. I have yet to see that film, but he's basically like become one of like the top 5 leading men actors in Hollywood that are like A, reliable in any type of genre, and B, just good in every single thing that they're in. Even in the movie 65, like he was pretty good. I mean, he was just like falling and in pain most of the film, but like, and the script was awful, but he was good. Like he's not the issue. And in this movie, he like is really, really, really good. He basically embodies Enzo Ferrari as this like large looming man that looks way larger than you would expect him to. And his character is so fascinating because he is so wrapped up in what is directly in front of him, or rather not wrapped up in what is directly in front of him, but he's like 3 steps ahead the entire time. And that causes him to at least appear as incredibly unemotional and incredibly like hard. There's a scene in the first like 15 minutes of the film where a driver dies during a driving test, like flies out of the car and is clearly just like, clearly dead. And within 3 seconds, Ferrari turns to the man next to him and says, "Hey, come to my office on Monday. You're going to be my driver." Like, not even concerned, I guess, openly with the fact that somebody died in front of him, but rather more concerned with, all right, I need another driver in this instant. You come into my office and be my driver. And Adam Driver is just like really, really good at being like heartless, being masked, and not really letting anything through until like, I don't know, until like the third act of this film, which I think is like some really, really great acting. Arguably the better actor in this film, though, is Penelope Cruz as Laura Ferrari. She is like kind of like the crazy one, the crazy wife stereotype in this film, but I think she does it pretty great justice, and kind of steals the movie in almost every scene she's in. It's a physical performance. She has like a limp, and she's angry, and she's emotional, and she's kind of like really like the opposite of Ferrari in the sense of like she's very much dealing with what's in front of her and making sure that you can see that and know that. And then there's Shailene Woodley, who like drops her Italian accent every third word she says, and doesn't like. Shailene Woodley's great in some things, but like I don't know what she was doing here. I feel like she got the script and was like, okay, wait, we're filming on Monday. All right, cool, I'm good. I'm not gonna rehearse or anything, because she just like is Shailene Woodley like in a kitchen most of the film. It's not the best role, to be fair, but like it was mostly like the accent dropping. Adam Driver's accent drops, like his Italian accent drops a couple times in the film. But Shailene Woodley's accent just like completely disappears. And like I didn't really like their chemistry as much. I think Penelope Cruz and Adam Driver have like much better chemistry, which maybe was the point of the film. I don't know. But I just think it's a weird role. Not my favorite Shailene Woodley performance. And then like the supporting cast is pretty fun. Most notably probably is Patrick Dempsey, who plays this man Piero Taruffi, who is I guess like older race car driver in this that ultimately wins the race at the end of the movie. So yeah, this film, like I said, is definitely like a weighty, talky drama. And I actually, though I wasn't expecting it and initially was kind of turned off by it, I thought it was really, really well done. Like Heat, this movie is talking about a lot of things. It's talking about masculinity, and it's talking about how men like bottle up their emotions and what that does, and grief, and what Enzo Ferrari valued in order to be seen as great. There's a lot of points in this film that are basically just like Enzo Ferrari being a like really bad media man. Like he's like saying all the wrong things in front of the media, but he's ultimately like a very, very good businessman. I guess like his Ferrari's just like not in a good place in this movie, but like he's making the right decisions, but he's awful in front of the press at being like, oh, this is my fault, we'll be better. And he's like, no, what you want me to be better? No, this isn't my fault. And there's a lot of like moments like that in the film. Overall, I think like the message of the film ultimately isn't super strong by the end of it. It's not like you walk away like, wow, I feel like I understand like what this movie was trying to say about masculinity. It's more so like, okay, I understand the story of what went down in 1957 with Enzo Ferrari and his family. And I think like the small story there is done pretty well. And it's kind of like augmented by some incredible racing scenes and some pretty like scary crash scenes that occur. Specifically the one crash that occurs in the last 15 minutes of the film. Like, holy crap. Really, really, really well done. And completely took me by surprise. I had no idea that was coming. So yeah, that was really awesome. The movie ends with like Laura Ferrari basically saying like, I'll give you the money, but you can't give your illegitimate son the last name Ferrari until after she dies, after Laura Ferrari dies, because her son Dino died and he was supposed to take the name, and now the man who's going to take the name eventually is not even her kid. And so Enzo agrees and then brings Piero, this kid, to Dino's grave to kind of as like a symbol of like, you are part of this family kind of thing. Like, this is your half brother. And then the the credit sequence shows that Laura Ferrari died, and then Piero Ferrari got the name and is now like, I forgot what his position is, but like he is a very, very large part of Ferrari as the company. Like he's like not the CEO, but maybe like one of the chairmen. He's like a majority owner or something. Like he's just like he got the money basically. Yeah, so like it's like the inverse of Maestro, right? Well, why I say that is because like both movies are good biopics in my opinion, but are ultimately like they don't give you emotional catharsis the way that you want when you watch a biopic. Like the best biopic of the year that I've seen is Oppenheimer, I've only seen it once. I'm actually going to see that movie again this week in IMAX 70mm to kind of get another take at it. But when I watched that movie, there was a certain level of emotional catharsis, albeit like a surprising emotional catharsis that I didn't expect. And my favorite biopics are ones that I walk away from being like, I understand that person better. And I think the movie like got their message across, and it was emotionally like tactical and specific enough for me to relate to. And I think that actually this is almost more successful in that than Maestro. But it's just, I just didn't really care that much by the end of the movie. I was like, okay, that was like, well done. And that's it. Like, I don't think I'll really be thinking about this too much. I'll honestly be thinking about the racing scenes more than I will like Enzo Ferrari, right? Like, I think that's the main difference here. This movie came out in theaters during the holidays, I think on Christmas Day. I believe it will be available on Amazon Prime or Paramount Plus, not exactly sure, but that should happen in February or March of this year. Like I said, like, look out for this movie. Maybe in Best Supporting Actress for Penelope Cruz. She's been getting a little bit of love, specifically from the Screen Actors Guild Awards, which is a pretty like notable nomination leading up to the Oscars, which the nominations drop January 23rd of this year. Other than that, I'd be surprised if this movie got a nomination, but hey, like, who knows? Maybe production design, maybe sound, incredible sound in this movie. So keep your eyes peeled for that. That's really all I have to say about Ferrari. Like, again, Maestro Ferrari, good movies, go see them. You know, I probably won't talk about them after award season is done this year. But there you have it. Those are the two biopics that came out in December that I watched. A couple more that came out this year. Oppenheimer, of course. Priscilla is on that list. I haven't gotten an opportunity to see Priscilla yet, but I've heard it's pretty good. And then, of course, there's a couple movies that are about, like, companies. Like, you have Air, BlackBerry, I guess Dumb Money is the story about the investors in GameStop that made out big there. So a couple, like, not biopic, but like company biopic movies that are out and about in 2023 that I've yet to see. But these are definitely some of the more notable ones that I wanted to cover because of award season and because they're going to be talked about in the next 2 months. Until next week, thanks for listening. Take care, and I'll see you then. Special thanks to my lovely girlfriend Krupa Patel for the podcast's artwork, and my good friend Kevin Cow for the music that you're listening to now. You can find more of his music on Instagram at Waguang Beats. Thanks, y'all.